biggest lie an adult made you believe when you were a kid? Story 1. I was always described by my mother as the easiest physical birth out of all of the kids. I was proud until I was told I was adopted when I was 18. Story 2. My mom knew. I was telling my dad everything. She was saying I was like 11 and lived with my dad, and she told me she got a new job at a local strip club called the Jawview. She didn't tell me it was a strip club, but said she was working at a Jawview. I went home and told him, and he got so pissed. She just told me that to him off for being nosy, lol. Story 3. When you lie, a big black L would appear on your forehead. I believed it so much that if I knew I had to lie to get out of a situation, I'd put on a hat. Nothing like a dead giveaway. Story 4. My parents told me that if I turned on the car light while they were driving, we would get arrested. I spent my entire childhood thinking it was basically a felony. Story 5. My mother once said that pets can read minds, so I shouldn't even think about swear words. My cat looked at me with his big charming eyes, and I believed. Story 6. My grandma used to drive me out to a lake and let me dig for rocks. I often found beautiful polished stones of every different color: amethyst, turquoise, obsidian, etc. At my cousin's wedding, when I was about 28 years old, he mentioned all those times Grandma would buy rocks from the hobby store and bury them for us. I instantly remembered Grandma making comments like, "Try digging a little more to the left." Story 7. I was scared of thunderstorms, and in the Tampa Bay area of Florida, they happen a lot. So when I was little, my dad told me that the thunder was angels in heaven playing bowling, and the really big thunders were them getting a strike. It actually helped a lot. I started to get excited and clap for the angels, and when a big loud boom came, we'd yell, "Strike together," and laugh. My dad was brilliant. I still think of that when storms come. Story 8. When we first got a hi-fi system with a CD player back in the early 90s, my sister and I were told by my parents that you can't stop the CD or it will get scratched. We spent years just turning the volume down when we didn't want to listen anymore, just waiting for the CD to finish. Story 9. My dad convinced my sister that her uncle was Spider-Man. But because his identity was secret, he couldn't let her know. He just watched over her. She got many fights at school over this. This is in 1974 to 1978. Story 10. That I could be anything I want if I put my mind to it. I'm still only 57, and I've put my mind to being over 6 feet for years, and it still hasn't happened. Story 11. My mom has a giant red, scattered birthmark on and around her elbow area. When I was 5 or so, I asked her about it, and she said, and I specifically remember her saying this no matter how hard she denies it, that she got it while in a hot air balloon and went too close to the sun, and 5-year-old me believed her for the longest time. Other than that, my parents have always been straight up with us kids. Story 12. We had a 62 Chevy station wagon with an automatic rear window. They were new to us, so we asked Dad how it worked. Instead of saying there's a button or it's magic, he told us elves live in the window well and rolled it up and down. We were quite concerned about their welfare, so we poured milk and jam down the window slot to feed them. It was high summer. After 3 days, the car stank to high heaven. Dad was furious with us, and there were lots of tears and yelling. Story 13. You can live a good life without any social life. Social life is just something stupid that kids who weren't serious about their future have or engage in. Comparing yourself with others will motivate you to perform better, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. If you work hard enough, you'll get everything you want from life. Story 14. If you swallow gum, it'll stay in your stomach for 7 years. Scare tactic to stop kids from swallowing it. But in reality, gum passes through your system like anything else, just not digestible. Story 15. Loved Pretty Woman as a kid. My mom told me they were mean to her because she was blonde. She wore a blonde wig, seemed legit, rewatched it at 24 and said, "Oh my God, she's a prostitute." Story 16. During a rare South Georgia Christmas snow, my uncle dressed as Santa borrowed or temporarily stole someone's horse, hitched the horse to a tobacco sled, and visited all of us country children in the neighborhood. I believed. Story 17. This idiot who worked at my school, she wasn't a teacher, and her exact title has escaped my memory, tricked me into a camp for 2 weeks. Her real name was Karen. I was 10 and very sheltered. Karen, come on. Let's sign you up. You'll love it. I love to read. I hate sports. I've never been away from home without my family. And am a picky eater. Okay, so maybe I didn't say all that, but I said most of it. Karen, let's call your mother and tell her you're going. I'm not going. Karen will be good for you to broaden your horizons. People told me this until I was much older. It never ended well. I'm not going. Karen will put your best friend in the same cabin. I finally agreed to go, best friend, and I took the bus to camp. Not only was she not in my cabin, I never saw her again until it was time to go home, which should have been my first lesson about the quality of a friendship. But I digress. I am 53 years old, and I still remember that light burning a hole in my soul. My parents never, ever lied to us, and I'm so grateful. Story 18, you have a bright future ahead of you like we had. War, inflation, unemployment on the rise due to automation of factory jobs and IT, low wages. The U.S. government made me believe that Saddam Hussein was imminently going to attack America. Now that I think about it, it was just as bad as Putin telling the Russian public that Ukraine was going to attack Russia. I never trusted America again after that lie. Story 19, my dad told me to find a career that I enjoy working makes me want to kill mess. I should have just accepted that fact and gone into something that pays well, instead of searching for a career that I enjoy. Story 20, I was a very picky eater as a kid with very thick glasses. So my dad told me eating all my carrots would help improve my night vision, which sucked. I didn't realize it was just World War II propaganda and legit thought the vitamins in carrots would somehow improve my vision and ate them all the time. I've often wondered if my history buff dad knew it was propaganda and repeated it just to get me to eat my veggies, or if had been told the same by his parents, never questioned it, and was repeating it thinking it was fact. Story 21, if you ask my now adult daughter, it was something I said to her when she was around 10 years old. As we were driving along one day, we passed a local Lutheran complex that had a church, a school, and a graveyard. I casually said to her, as a dad joke, "Do you see all those tombstones over there next to that school? Those are the graves of all the children who flunked their tests," and just kept driving. I thought it was funny and never thought another thing about it. Years later, we passed by, and that comment came up again, and my now adult daughter exclaimed, "I believed you. Had I known then what I know now, I'd have kept my mouth shut." Story 22, that they loved me. I wasn't abused or neglected or anything like that. I am the middle of 3 boys, and it was incredibly obvious that my older brother was my mother's favorite, and my younger brother was my father's. I was just there 30-something years later, and it still hurts. I have never had a normal relationship with another person, and don't think I ever will be able. I have no idea what healthy relationship dynamics are, and every time I'm involved with someone, I always manage to destroy the relationship. Story 23, that my sweet uncle was unmarried and single because he was allergic to cats, and all the women he dated had cats. He is gay, figured it out as a teen. Story 24, that I wouldn't always have a calculator in my pocket. We wasted so much time at school because of that totally inaccurate premise. My phone has more computing power than the machines they used to do the math for the moon landing. Story 25, every high school teacher who said that college professors would not take anything less than perfect. Meanwhile, college teachers are some of the most non-serious teachers you can have, even less strict than all the high school teachers. Story 26, my parents used to say you can tell if someone is really asleep because their eyes move around a lot, because they're dreaming. Needless to say, they always knew I was faking sleep because my eyes were darting around like a psycho behind my eyelids. Story 27, that the haircut rocked by Rockers the Name is offensive and no longer used cost $1 million, and that's why all kids were super poor and had ripped up clothes, and that's why I couldn't have one. We couldn't afford it. Story 28, when I was little, my dad told me that if I pressed the eject button on the car's dashboard while driving, the whole car would eject like a fighter jet. I spent years terrified of accidentally launching my family into the sky. Story 29, we in the Netherlands get told as kids that there's a holy man, Sinterklaas, Saint Nicholas, the spiritual forefather of Santa Claus, 300 years old, with his helper Pete, who used to be Blackface Pete, but mostly not anymore after some hot culture wars. MTNGA Dutch still support Blackface Pete, though, who buys presents for all good kiddies. Sinterklaas has a long white beard, a pointy red bishop hat, a long red robe, and a long golden staff. Every year they arrive from Spain on a boat packed with presents. He arrives in all Dutch cities and holds a big parade attended by all the kids and their parents. The arrival of Sinterklaas is on national television, and there's a daily journal on TV too, where Sinterklaas and the mini Petes overcome many problems in order to deliver the presents to the kids. Sint and Pete visit primary schools too. Sint often rides on a white horse, often on the roofs of houses. Pete descends through the chimney in order to deliver the presents. On December 5th, there will be knocks on the door, and when the kids open the door, surprise, there's a bag with presents. The family unpacks the presents, eat a lot of Sinterklaas candy like chocolate letters, marzipan, and peppermint. Most Dutch kids grow up believing in Sinterklaas, just like kids being taught religion. One day the kids are going to find out Sinterklaas does not exist. We told our youngest daughter. She cried and was really angry with us. Story 30, I was told my parents' divorce was on account of my dad cheating on my mom. Fast forward, and I'm 40-something to find out it was the other way around. My whole childhood filled with needless hatred for my dad. Story 31, all that barbaric medieval nonsense about this Jesus fellow dying for my as yet uncommitted sins What I realized at some point, this was basically a scapegoating fantasy, and am still shocked that people with functioning brains still buy into it. Story 32, getting a degree was important, but the type didn't really matter. Just get your piece of paper, and you'll be guaranteed a good job. I'm lucky to have a degree, but man, I wish I'd picked a different major and worked harder at it. Very lucky to have the life and job I do, but the degree wasn't really all that necessary to get the things I have now. Story 33, am not sure if my mom intended for me to believe this, but I truly thought that if I got a splinter and I didn't let an adult pick it out of me, which hurt, it would always become infected 100 of the time, and I'd have to get the limb amputated. She knew a lady who lost a finger this way and told me about it when I was little. I was a full-grown adult when I learned that in some cases, the body just absorbs and/or calcifies tiny foreign objects sometimes, and they just hang around inside, forever causing no harm. Story 34, my dad told me the story of Cujo, the courageous St. Bernard dog that saved a family from wolves with rabies. Many years later, I watched that movie that I would eventually have to consent to, because if I didn't have, I would die. I never really had an even passing interest in the physical act of, but if I was going to survive, I would have to eventually do it, and I was going to be ready. I was less than satisfied with the education I revived about from both my parents and the school, which basically just consisted of periods EW don't ruin men's lives, and pregnancy if you don't ruin men's lives, plus a very detailed explanation of men's anatomy, with all the proper names for all the parts with my own women's anatomy kept a secret for, and I quote, my future husband to later fully educate me on my body, so we're not going to tell you anything now. I didn't like that at all, so went out on my own, determined to be fully educated, not ignorant or blind about anything wise before falling on that grenade, as it were, and it was during my research that I discovered the truth actually wasn't needed at all to live a full and complete life. I will give credit, though it is an interesting subject to study, very interesting, in fact, one of my favorites in all honesty. It's actually shocking how much information about is actually out there, how embarrassingly easy it was to access. They make it sound like you had to have some manner of upper tier clearance just to access it, and even more shocking, just how much of it is just kept from people, children, and adults alike. I'm so happy I discovered the truth before some deviant could get their hands on me, and am proud to say that I have not engaged in it all in my 42 years of life. Never felt the supposed, as I've been told, indescribably strong urge to engage, as well as impossible to fight and ignore, and never experienced anything negative from having gone without it forget feeling like my life was ending. I now laugh when I hear people say they're dying without how painful it is. They're dying. Oh, stop lying. No, you're not. No, it's not. Learning a trade, hard work, and a good ethics will get you somewhere in life. Story 35, that my neck was always dirty. In my country, children were uniformed from kindergarten to high school. All those years ID wear collar blouse, and being exposed to sun daily, I got a permanent tan from my face to my neck at the collar and the V where the button stops. For years, she told me to scrub my neck, because I wasn't showering properly, and my neck was always dirty. It was just a permanent tan from the same style clothes exposed to the sun for 15 years. Story 36, my grandpa would tell me a story about HIW. He wandered off to a creek on his own when he was a kid and was kidnapped by Smurfs. I believed it for longer than I'm proud to admit. He just wanted to be sure I wouldn't go off on my own. Story 37, my parents stopped lying to me and started to tell the truth. My high-functioning autistic mind, also with ADHD, I would ask so many questions. They told me the truth because it would be simple and easy to understand. I agreed. The truth was better than the lie, and it was easier. You'll understand when you're older. I would point out how mature I was, and they would say the truth. Me, that's easy, thanks. Better than the lies. My parents, don't be a political person. You're not able to lie either. Me, why would I lie to someone? Just don't tell me something you can't say. I front a law person. Parents, she does have a point. Other parents, she needs to be a person who writes a rule book. Me, I like reading. Also, instructions are simple. People stop yelling at me if I follow the rules. My partner, and there she is. Me, yes, I learned critical reading and thinking in school. 32F. Story 38, if I did well in school and got a degree, I could buy a house and have a family. I have a high-paying degree, as does my partner. Our household income, adjusted for inflation, is higher than my parents when they bought a house and had a couple of kids, yet we are nowhere near buying a house in the same area. Story 39, there was a bald-headed lady with 3 titties that lived in the bushes and that she would chase us if we walked down the wrong street before or after school. Story 40, whenever my relatives give me money, my parents will take it and tell me that they're doing that for safekeeping and that it'll get it back when we got back home. After they took the money, I never got it back. Story 41, work hard now, so that life will be easier later. I am 21, so haven't really lived long enough to know whether this is true or a lie, but so far it doesn't seem that life is getting easier. Story 42. My dad really put himself on a pedestal and made me think he was this awesome, smart, genuine person. Well, fast forward to adulthood, in no contact, and he cheats on his baby mama, as he calls her when he's trying to get laid, and has given her a black, but they're still happily together, fighting all the time, and my dad is still a chronic cheater, but y'all, I'm the crazy one for calling him out to everyone, including my Ebola. I apparently lie and am a junkie. I smoke weed and have only ever smoked weed. He said this when we lived in Vermont, where weed is so legal. I challenged his hypocrisy, and I became the odd one out. Everyone still talks to him, but in the worst because I hold him accountable, and he told me my abusive childhood was normal, and I deserved it. Father of the Year, everyone. Story 43. People will be constantly making fun of and demeaning you in the real world. If we make fun of you, it's just to prepare you then. I don't think I've ever met a person who intentionally brought someone down. Story 44. Not a lie, but a scam. I was a scout when I was 9. I had to sell calendars in my fancy neighborhood to finance a small humanitarian party, and a guy about 40 bought me a calendar for $5 with a banknote head rolled up. When I unrolled the bill at home, I discovered it had been cut in two. I still get on my nerves when I think of it. Story 45. Studying well will give you a good job in the future. I have a bachelor in my pocket, and I'm employed for 3 years now. Because even call centers won't take me for having a beard unless you're an A-grade student. With connections out the wazoo, studying hard for something you love will bite you in, because reality is a lot more sour than the strawberry shortcake of a promise you believed in. Story 46. That when my grandpa died, he was in heaven in the clouds. I realized that for a child around 6, it can be hard to explain death and where PPL go when they died. Well, my dad was a fighter pilot in World War II, Korean and Vietnam Wars. He was a CEO of a squadron and was able to take me flying with him in the old prop planes. After hearing I was going to fly with him and just knew I would get to see my grandpa and Jesus because they live in the clouds, I was so disappointed when they weren't there. I realized that I was lied to and told my dad he lied to me. I realize now that was the easiest way to explain to a child that grandpa was in the clouds, since I was too young to really understand about heaven. I was a daddy's girl, and he was just trying to explain in terms I could understand, but it hurt. Story 47. While not technically a lie, I was a teenager when I learned that don't drink and drive was only referring to alcohol. There were numerous times as a kid I'd scold my parents for drinking soda or water while driving. Felt so dumb that it was never explained to me what it actually meant. Story 48. My parents told me they could see everything and they had eyes in the back of their head, so me and my sibling would behave when they were around. The thought scared me, and I believed it. Story 49. Adults had some plan and knew what they were doing all the time. In the world of work, mostly it's guesswork, and once you have a kid, you realize parenting is just making it up as you go along. Story 50. My mom told my sister, and she was a Grammy Award-winning singer. All of her trophies were in the attic. We never saw them BC. She knew we wouldn't go in there. We told all of our friends. When I was older, I thought, how could someone who has a terrible singing voice win Grammys? I was devastated when the truth came out. Story 51. The American Dream. That I'd someday have money to buy a house in my lifetime. That I had to get a degree or else I'd be poor. Spoiler, I have a degree and am still poor. Story 52. My parents taught me that the brown cows made chocolate milk. White cows made regular milk. I remember asking a Mennonite woman where all of the chocolate cows were when we toured a dairy farm. My mom almost pissed her pants. She was laughing so hard. I was 13. Story 53. Grandpa said raisin bread was made with cockroaches. I was 6. I just smiled and finished my sandwich. My 5-year-old cousin was sitting next to me. He never ate raisin bread again. Story 54. My mother told me she would always love me no matter what, that a parent's love was unconditional. She has hurt me in ways that I cannot totally quantify.